edition of Sports First. I'm Gabrielle Amado, joined by Andres Cordero, who already gave you his infamous wave. We're a little bit late today, so we're going to get you guys caught up on all the transfer news because there's 3 days to go in the transfer window, and we have a lot to get to. We'll talk a little bit of Real Madrid, some Barcelona, some Liverpool, all this on Sports First. That starts now. So like I said, 3 days to go in the January transfer window, and we have an update on Barcelona's striker hunt. So the latest, Dre, is that Rodrigo, the Rodrigo deal is directly tied with the Bruno Fernandes deal. Of course, for you guys that haven't been keeping up, this is a center attacking midfielder from Sporting who initially was linked with a move to Manchester United. Now, Barcelona are going to pick up Bruno Fernandes, loan him immediately to Valencia, and Valencia will release Rodrigo and loan him to Barcelona. This is the latest rumor.
But there are so many sort of ifs and so many stumbling blocks in the deal. It's so rare for these types of trades, for lack of a better term, to actually pan out, right? Because you're involving 2 different teams and at least 2 players, but potentially more, right? So as you summarized quite nicely, Barcelona would sign Bruno Fernandes outright. He would belong to Barcelona as a player that they've had on their radar who they'd like to sign ahead of next season, but don't necessarily have the money for. We'll get into that.
Right.
They want to sign Bruno Fernandes. They also want to attract Rodrigo because they don't have a spot for Bruno Fernandes in their midfield this season. So he would go on loan to Valencia until the end of the year. And Rodrigo would join Barcelona on loan. It's still not clear whether that loan would have an obligation for Barcelona to buy him or whether they can ship him back to Mestalla afterwards. So again, Barcelona might have to move another player in order to finance this. So someone like a Carles Perez or a Nelson Semedo would have to go. There's a lot of potential stumbling blocks. They've met. The Barcelona and Valencia delegations have met twice, most recently Monday night. Nothing done as of yet. Bruno Fernandes is a player that Barca fans could get really excited about for the future and would fill an immediate need for Valencia now. But Barca don't need an attacking midfielder at the moment. They need a center forward, and that's where Rodrigo would come in.
Absolutely. For those of you kind of confused about why these pieces all fit together, 2 words, Jorge Mendes. So that's the super agent. He is not Bruno Fernandes' agent. He has been hired by Bruno Fernandes' agent, who I believe is his brother-in-law, family members, has been hired as an intermediary.
He's a fixer.
Correct. And Jorge Mendes is Rodrigo's agent. And so that's how these 2 pieces kind of combine. But there's a lot to dissect here, so let's take this from the very top. For Barcelona fans who maybe haven't been keeping up with Valencia on the day-to-day, what type of striker is Rodrigo Moreno?
So you'd have to put yourself in Rodrigo's shoes first, right? Because he's only had 1 double-digit goal-scoring season in La Liga in 5 previous campaigns with Valencia. He scored 16 goals in that 2016-2017 season. And after that, Real Madrid were this close to signing him. Julian Lopetegui, the man who made him a Spanish international, tried to take him to Real Madrid. He, by reports, he had said goodbye to his teammates. That broke down. This past summer, he was reportedly on his way to Atletico Madrid. They had to move on Correa. That didn't work. And so, again, he was on his way out to Atletico. That didn't work. And now he's on his way to Barcelona, potentially. And so you can excuse Rodrigo for not believing it until he's actually holding up the Barcelona shirt. Now, it's difficult, almost impossible for Barcelona to replace the volume of goals that they're missing with Luis Suarez being injured for the rest of the season. Rodrigo isn't going to get even close to that. That's not the kind of center forward that he is, and he is predominantly a center forward. What he does bring is a ton of energy, a selflessness that has seen him toward the top of the assist charts in La Liga this season. 6 assists for Valencia side that don't have necessarily a goal to score, although Maxi Gomez has been picking up. And I think what Barcelona would get out of him, and it's something that maybe Barca fans, it's not what they would expect, it's not what they would want. They would demand goals, but what they would get is a selfless center forward who is very good at pressing the opposition, at helping to win the ball back for Barcelona high up the pitch. That would help in Quique Setien's system, a system that requires the defense to be very high up the pitch, the attackers to be the first line of defense in transition. Rodrigo is perfect, prototypical center forward for that. And one of the things that he does so well is dispossess the opposing defense, win the ball back quickly, and then assist one of the other forwards, whether it's Messi, whether it's Griezmann, whether it's Dembele. And so from that standpoint, I think he is a very good fit for Barcelona. I just wonder if, like a season ago with Boateng, if fans are expecting a forward who's going to come in and fill the number of goals that you're missing with Luis Suarez, you're not going to get that out of Rodrigo. And so that's why I think it's raising some eyebrows that Barcelona would break the bank potentially if there's an obligation to buy to sign a Rodrigo who would cost around $66 million long term.
Right, and that's precisely where I was going to get to. Is he worth that kind of money? That money that Valencia has his price tag currently set at, which is around 66.
So that was apparently one of the stumbling blocks that had this deal effectively dead, was that Valencia wanted to include an obligation to buy at the end of the loan. So effectively, Barca would get Rodrigo on loan for the rest of the season, but then Barca were obligated to pay the buyout clause at the end of the campaign, which was 60 million euros, around $66 million.
Right.
Maybe with the inclusion of Bruno Fernandes going on loan until at least the end of the season, potentially one more season beyond that, that could perhaps ease Valencia's demand that they buy Rodrigo outright, because they would be getting a pretty good player at least for a period of time. But that, again, is one of the many stumbling blocks in the way of this deal.
And a lot of people in our comment section talking about Lautaro Martinez. It is still in Barcelona's long-term plan to find a long-term replacement for Luis Suarez. And as per what I have understood, Rodrigo, they don't see him as the long-term replacement.
Well, again, he's not going to give you... Listen, in the last decade, the only players not named Cristiano Ronaldo or Leo Messi to score 40 goals in a La Liga season was Luis Suarez. Luis Suarez has been toward the top of the scoring charts virtually every season alongside Lionel Messi. And maybe there's a belief at Barcelona that they have enough goals in Messi and Griezmann that's not necessarily what they need out of the other potential striker, but rather someone who is a playmaker, someone who's going to press effectively. Rodrigo is that. But as you saw just a moment ago with that comment from Mike Fuentes, only 2 goals so far in 16 games this season. And in the 5 previous seasons, only once did he reach double-digit goals in La Liga. But that's not the reason he would be brought down. It was an unpopular decision when Barcelona brought Boateng halfway through last season, but I understood the role that they wanted out of Boateng as well, because I saw what he was doing at Sassuolo. He was a target center forward who could play with his back to goal and knock balls down for the other wingers. It didn't pan out at Barcelona, but that was the reason they brought him over. It wasn't so that he could be a goal-scoring, sort of a high-volume scorer.
Right.
It's also not why they would bring Rodrigo now. It would be more to fill a need in intensity and pressing, almost a defensive striker, if that makes any sense.
Right. No, it absolutely does. Jean Kiel saying, yeah, I feel like Barca continue on making signing mistakes. Their system doesn't really make sense anymore. And a lot of people are confused because, okay, you're buying Bruno Fernandes permanently to add to a midfield roster that is already too long for a team to have. A lot of people pointing questions. I mean, you may have Coutinho coming back this summer also.
Yeah, but likely to move again. And Rakitic is a player who I think Barcelona want to move as well. And I think, listen, the most exciting part of this deal, if you're a Barcelona fan, is that you are signing Bruno Fernandes. Even if you're sending him away on loan for a season or for half a season or more than that, this is a guy who's he's entering the real peak prime years of his career. He's 25 years old, so he's entering the real prime of his career. I did a ton of his games when he was at Udinese and at Sampdoria in Serie A, and he was a standout then as a player who can fill a variety of roles in midfield. He can be a playmaker like a classic number 10, or he can be a box-to-box type midfielder getting more touches. He's a goal-scoring midfielder. He was the second top scorer in the Portuguese Liga last season. He is, I believe, also top 3 this year in scoring, and he's the only midfielder among the top 14 goal scorers in the Portuguese Liga this year. He's also a great playmaker. He can dribble. He can break through lines. He's an exciting signing for Barcelona long term, and potentially now in the short term, what Barcelona need in order to sort of unblock this Rodrigo move.
And doing all of this with a Sporting side who have not had their best season, to put it lightly.
Yeah.
Bavon Gray saying the Barcelona news / signings / departures has my head spinning. It has our heads also spinning. Mike Fuentes saying you're a classic 10, Dre, with heart eyes emoji. There is some flirting going on in our comment section. I love it. Frank Leon saying Barca want to sell players but want certain prices that they aren't going to get. I don't know if this is so much the case for Barcelona, but when you look at a Manchester United who now missed out on Erling Haaland, missed out on Bruno Fernandes, they're the side who don't want to pay the price tag that players have and deserve to be set at.
Barca are also kind of, speaking out of both sides of their mouth in a sense at times when they talk about transfers, because they say they don't have the money to make a big splash and they do have to move other pieces around. Like there's been talk of Carlos Fernandes going to Roma, potentially other destinations for him. They've moved Alenya on loan to Betis. And they do say they need to sell someone like a Rakitic in order to make way, but then at the same time they're being linked with Bruno Fernandes, who would cost upwards of 70 million.
Right.
Rodrigo, who if they do end up having to buy him, would cost upwards of 60 million. So it's clear that Barcelona would still need to sort of move some pieces in order to make this stuff happen.
Now we're looking at the Barcelona side. We touched on the Manchester United side, but Valencia, I think, make out fantastically for the second half of this season. They get a player on loan who they didn't have to spend a cent for on a loan deal. And they offloaded Rodrigo, who, as Mike pointed out, hasn't really been performing in the goal scoring department maybe as they would have liked.
And there's nothing like a Bruno Fernandes currently on the Valencia squad. They have more sort of, physical, hard-nosed types of center midfielders right now. Dani Parejo is maybe their best distributor, but he doesn't have the same energy and dribbling and speed, really, of a Bruno Fernandes. The other ones are like Kondogbia, Coquelin. They're more sort of destroyers in the middle, like central midfielders that don't necessarily give you a ton going forward. Bruno Fernandes does give them that, and I think he would dramatically improve Valencia immediately if they get him for the second half of the season. And then Barcelona, once they do move on from Rakitic, they have some young midfielders beyond Busquets, who's already past 30, Frankie de Jong, Artur. Well, Bruno Fernandes is another guy who can be there for a long, long time and give Barca a lot of joy.
What do you say to someone like Jacob Chavez in our comment section who's saying Rodrigo is a panic buy?
I don't disagree that Barcelona look like they've made some panic buys, and it wouldn't be the first time because the amount that they paid, for example, for Ousmane Dembele, I mean, maybe that's what it costs to get him, but everyone sort of knew that Barcelona needed it. Barcelona, like, kind of desperate with, like, money hanging out of their hands, and that's not a really strong bargaining position, right? So they lose Neymar, he gets snatched away at the end of Luis Enrique's tenure, and everyone knows Barcelona have 222 million euro to spend and are desperate to sign a replacement, and so they overpay for Coutinho, they overpay for Ousmane Dembele, and now they're in a situation with Luis Suarez injured for the rest of the season where everyone knows that Barca are desperate to sign a center forward, so they haven't been in a strong negotiating position in any of this, but that's kind of classic Barcelona. If you remember, they sold Ronaldinho at a discount to Milan, they sold Deco at a discount to Chelsea, so Barcelona have sort of historically, when they're not promoting their own players, they're kind of buying high and selling low. It's been the reality of both Barcelona and Real Madrid for a long time. Madrid have changed their strategy. Madrid have gone out and bought, young players from Spanish football, young players from Brazilian football, in order to compete with what Florentino calls the petrodollars. Barca haven't necessarily changed their strategy too much, and instead are going out and spending upwards of 100 million on Dembele, Coutinho, Griezmann repeatedly.
Right. A lot of people speaking about Dembele, maybe saying that Rodrigo isn't necessarily a must-buy because you have the prospect of an Ousmane Dembele coming back in mid-February. But let's be real, guys. This is a player who gets injured every 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's a bit like Real Madrid counting on Gareth Bale, right? Yeah, if he's healthy, it's brilliant. You've got a real elite type of talent on there, but Ousmane Dembele has had recurring injuries, and you do have to... Barcelona are still in contention for everything. Granted, Real Madrid have taken over the lead in La Liga, but Barca are just 3 points off the pace. They've got an accessible draw in the Champions League. They're obviously through in the Copa del Rey, so it's a team that's going to be competing on 3 fronts down the second half of the season. So I don't know that they can afford to not have a potential insurance in case Ousmane Dembele is re-injured and missing for a significant amount of time, especially considering they're already without Luis Suarez.
Right. A really interesting point brought up by Mo Sadi. Messi wants to play only with Suarez and Neymar. As long as Barca can't get Neymar back, they will keep just bringing in players who will not fit because of Messi. Now, I'm not going to respond directly to his comment, but how do you think that a Rodrigo will play alongside Messi? Is it going to work?
That aside, I will address the comment directly.
Oh, it's coming at you, Mo.
No, I'm not coming at anyone, but just... there's this perception that we all know what Messi wants, and that Messi runs the show at Barcelona, and that Messi wants this coach, and that Messi wants to play with these players. And throughout his entire career, Messi has been such a soft-spoken, quiet, even sort of guarded player that it allows people to project whatever they want onto Messi, right? If you want Messi to be the tiny dictator, Messi's the tiny dictator. If you want Messi to be selfish, Messi's selfish, because Messi isn't coming out and saying anything controversial. He's not coming out and sort of creating his own narrative. It allows other people to project a narrative onto him. I don't think we know what Messi wants. I know he likes playing with Suarez and Neymar because when they played together, there was real joy out of Messi. But I don't think that he's dictating like who he wants to play with and who he doesn't want to play with. And I think we often, almost always, overblow this idea that like he's there because Messi wants him and he's not. When in reality, it's sort of fan speak.
Well, yeah, but there have been a lot of rumors, especially with the Argentine national team, that Messi is the one that picks who he plays alongside. And
every single Argentine player who's ever been asked about that has said it's categorically false. And it's just, and because Messi doesn't come out and defend himself in those kind of things, and because Messi has been so quiet and soft-spoken, listen, I'm not saying that I don't know any more than the fans in terms of whether this is true or not. I just know that a lot of this sounds like projecting onto a player that doesn't ever talk about these sorts of things.
Right, it is true. Danny Franco saying Andre Gomes 2.0. So you're predicting Bruno Fernandes to be Andre Gomes.
Very different player from Andre Gomes, even though Andre Gomes was also at Valencia an attacking midfielder, so they sort of occupied some of the same spaces. Andre Gomes was slow as time, right? And and really just
that is so mean.
Did not.
He was just heavier. I don't know. It looked like it just took him a lot of time to cover ground.
And
Bruno Fernandes is much more creative also than Andre Gomes.
Right.
Don't say that.
I don't think it's a very good comparison.
That's not very nice. Okay, we've spoken a lot about this topic, so let's move on because we do want to talk about the other transfers that have not only happened already, but going to happen. Gabigol, done deal to Flamengo. They have purchased him permanently. Gabigol will be at Flamengo until 2024. His purchase from Inter Milan is done and dusted. This is, I think, not only fantastic news for Flamengo, but for Gabigol because it seems like he's finally found his form, found his rhythm. And stay put where you're happiest.
I mean, obviously, he's had a breakout season.
Right.
Top scorer in the Copa Libertadores, top scorer in the Brasileirão. Won both of those titles with Flamengo and just looks to be comfortable and happy for a player who, throughout his careers, there's been like murmurs that he is a little bit difficult to deal with.
Yes.
For a player who sort of flamed out spectacularly as a young player at Inter. Obviously, they don't need him anymore, and so I think this makes sense for both parties. Flamengo have a very ambitious project. I don't think that all the signings, those 8 new starters that they picked up at the start of last season, it wasn't just for one run at the Copa Libertadores. They're going to try and defend that title.
Right.
They want this to be sort of a golden generation for Flamengo, and Gabigol is obviously a very clear centerpiece of that project, and he's a player that is still young enough that you could eventually move him on at a big transfer fee. So this is one of the most logical moves, and for it to happen sort of now in the January transfer window when other European clubs might have been interested in bringing a Gabigol in, I think it's a coup for Flamengo.
Absolutely, and for a Flamengo team who I was at the Copa Libertadores final, and as soon as the second goal went in and they were Copa Libertadores champions, they chanted for manager Jorge Jesus, but the second chant was for Gabigol to stay. Right. Asking him to stay. So Flamengo fans will be thrilled to hear about that. Speaking of Inter done deal. Eriksen is now an Inter Milan player.
It's a very positive show today, right? Because I think it's also a very good move for both Eriksen. Although we always assumed that Eriksen was previously heavily linked with like Real Madrid, so we always assumed that he was going to make a big leap forward in his career from Spurs to a side that's going to sort of contend for European titles, whether it was at Real Madrid or elsewhere. This is not that much of a, maybe a lateral move, if anything, but Inter are in contention for the Scudetto at the moment, which is more than you can say for Spurs in the Premier League. They're not in contention for the Premier League title.
Right.
So his chance of winning silverware is increased, and he feels the need for Inter, because Inter need sort of a creative presence because some of the injuries that they've had. They need a creative presence in the midfield, someone to get the ball to Lukaku, to Lautaro, and Christian Eriksen is that, whether it's through his passing, whether it's through his dribbling. He's a player who can break through lines, player with a ton of experience, and I think the way that Serie A is, the sort of kind of rigid tactical nature of Serie A is going to allow Eriksen to be a real creative presence to carve up some of those Serie A defenses. I think it's a really exciting signing for Inter.
Mark Golden saying Eriksen signed by Inter, good move for him, while Donovan Pacheco in our comment section saying it's a good move by Inter, but not for Eriksen.
There is a picture of that just released today. I think it's on Inter's Twitter feed,
it's hilarious.
Where he seems to be sort of confused. He's got his hands out and he's got all of Inter's trophies behind him. It's like, what are these things, right? So I do think it gives him an opportunity to really compete for something that he wasn't. I mean, obviously Spurs were in the Champions League semifinal last season, so It's not like he wasn't competing, but they're not that now. They're sort of at the start of a new project under Jose Mourinho. And where Dele Alli had sort of benefited from the arrival of Mourinho, Eriksen maybe less so.
Right.
Clearly he wanted to move. This isn't the Real Madrid move that he wanted, but it's potentially a very positive step for him.
Maldonator's comment was just on here, and it said Gabigol was available and Barca went for Rodrigo.
Yeah, I'm not sure that Gabigol would have been a good fit for Barcelona.
Personality-wise. And things that even Jorge Jesus has mentioned that Gabigol can be a little bit difficult. Speaking of Inter, so that's Inter's third signing of the window. They got Ashley Young, Victor Moses, and now Eriksen. The fourth that they're going for is Giroud. So Inter, everything's agreed with Olivier Giroud. The one thing that they're waiting on is they have to sell Matteo Politano to Napoli in order to make that move.
Looks to be getting done.
Right. So that's just one missing puzzle piece. Tottenham also.
I think I saw a picture of De Laurentiis, the Napoli president, with Politano saying welcome Matteo earlier this morning. So that might have been done.
So that may even be done and dusted. So that would mean that we'll hear about Olivier Giroud very shortly. Giovanni Lo Celso, done deal to Tottenham.
Brilliant. I mean,
a brilliant move.
Eriksen being gone now, Lo Celso, they lock up sort of similar to Bruno Fernandes, who's going into sort of the best years, the peak years of his career.
Right.
It's the same is true with Giovanni Lo Celso. And it's almost like I don't watch as much Premier League as I do the leagues that we cover here. So I miss watching Lo Celso playing for Betis because he and Sergio Canales were so brilliant last season. Lo Celso is a terrific midfielder who can fill a variety of roles. He can play, as a sort of a deep-lying playmaker, which actually Paris tried to do when Unai Emery was there.
Right.
To, sort of mixed success. But he's great going forward. And this is a guy who I think can be an absolute, mainstay of Spurs midfield for the next 4 or 5 years. Maybe more.
Mosadi asking, I know this is crazy, but looking at the market now, you think Cavani to Real could be a good move for Real Madrid?
First of all, it's never Real. It's either Madrid or Real Madrid. It's neverAl. There's like a billion Reals in Spain.
Exactly.
So,
a lot of teams are nicknamed La Real.
Espanol or a Real. So
Correct.
There's too many Reals. It's Madrid. That aside, I'm super pedantic about that. What was the question? Whether Cavani could be a good sign for Madrid?
To Madrid.
Cavani seems to reportedly have a sort of a deal,
Yeah.
pre-contract agreement in place with Atletico Madrid that got done last summer.
Yeah.
It looks like Atleti is going to be his destination, and if they can't get it done within the next couple of days, with the transfer market window now closing, he'll stay in PSG for the rest of the season, and he'll likely join Atletico next season.
Speaking of Cavani, though, really confusing statements by the Atleti president, Enrique Cerezo, saying he has nothing with the player. That's very bizarre.
It is just a rumor. It is just a report, and so maybe it's in Atleti's best interest not to claim to have that deal done. It was a report.
Right.
Guy and Balage was one of the ones who, I'm not sure if his original reporting, but they had said that Cavani had a pre-contract agreement. Now, a pre-contract agreement means nothing. That there's nothing in writing there. It's just basically, I want to go there, and it would be for 2 years, and it would be for around this amount of money. So the sort of framework of a deal was done without actually having a deal in place. So Cerezo isn't necessarily lying if he says we don't have anything done with Cavani, and all that they have is actually a pre-contract agreement because it's not an enforceable deal.
Mosadi is saying sorry to Dre,
That's
so
all good.
apology accepted, Mo. Molinator King saying Barca have managed to keep Neymar well behaved and might have worked with Gabigol. He's a closer replacement for Suarez than Rodrigo. Interesting. I mean, yeah, they have worked on keeping a player like Neymar under wraps and well behaved, but
Neymar is thriving right now in Paris, and I know that the rumors are going to spark back up about Neymar to Barcelona. We know that he wanted to be there, that he tried to force his way out. Now he seems to be saying all the right things, that he doesn't like. He would like to actually extend his deal with Paris. I don't know where this is headed, but especially if someone comes in with like a $300 million offer for Kylian Mbappe this summer to try and snatch Mbappe away from Paris, all of a sudden Paris becomes Neymar's team and exclusively Neymar's team, right? And I could see them sort of sticking around a little bit longer. I was convinced when Neymar left Barcelona that he would eventually end up at Real Madrid. And I still feel like that is going to be a thing that happens, whether it's in the near future or in the distant future. He's got the quality to play for virtually any club on the planet that he wants. And I'm not saying that Madrid are going to get him now. I'm just saying that it wouldn't blow my mind.
No, absolutely. And a lot of people think that he strategically put PSG between the two so that it didn't hurt as much.
So it wasn't a Figo situation.
Correct.
Because
we all know how that one went. Des Norris with really the $1 million question. Dre, where do you stand on people referring to Manchester United as United?
Oh, that's fine.
Oh, approved.
Yeah.
We'll have to publish this list.
No, and I get why that's being asked. It's being asked because there's a ton of Uniteds, right? And so that was kind of like, it blows up my logic on Real. You won't go traditionally, Leeds United, you can call them United. Manchester United, you can call them United. With Real Madrid, you don't call them Real. You call them Madrid. You call them Merengues. You call them Los Blancos. You call them Real Madrid. It's just not Real. I guess you can. I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm just being a pedant about this.
No, you can't, though. Not on sports, first while Dre is on. David Martin saying, no to Neymar at Real Madrid. No more. So not happy about that. Fabian Cardellino saying Real Madrid would get Mbappe before Neymar. Interesting. Now our comment section is blowing up about Neymar to Real Madrid.
So one thing, completely unrelated to transfers, I am totally convinced Neymar is the second best player on the planet and the closest thing
you said
to
that
Messi
yesterday,
at the moment on weekend winners.
Yes.
And he is not anywhere close to being one of the most popular players on the planet. He's got obviously a huge fan base, but he is unpopular in a lot of sectors because of some of the things that he's done, some of the ways that he carries himself. But you watch Neymar, he's still, in my opinion, different role, but a better player than Kylian Mbappe. Mbappe has a higher ceiling, perhaps. Mbappe will be a Ballon d'Or winner one day. Mbappe is already a World Cup winner, which Neymar is not. But if I had to choose between having, all things being equal, having Neymar on my team or Mbappe on my team for this season, I'd take Neymar. I think he's the second best player on the planet.
Wow. And that is how we're going to end the show because there's really nothing else that we can say. I do want to let everyone know because I know you're dying to know that Ben Arfa is now a Valladolid player.
Yes.
Major news, kind of. What happened to Ben Arfa?
Actually, that's a lot of fun. Ben Arfa is a fun player to watch. He's worth the price of admission. When he's focused, he's not always focused. My favorite story recently of Hatem Ben Arfa is Ben Arfa was frozen out for over a year by Paris Saint-Germain. and he actually celebrated on social media on the anniversary of his 1 year being frozen out with a cake that had just the one candle on it.
And that's been ARFA for you. Anyway, that's all we have for you today on Sports Burst. Today is National Have Fun at Work Day.
Oh, brilliant.
So we're going to go have fun at work, as we have been. And
doing
you guys, thank you for joining us and having fun with us. Bye.